So, if you're feeling like it could be confusing to date the hot and cold partner in relationships, in other words, the fearful avoidant attachment style, then in this video, we're going to cover four major strategies to develop a lot more closeness in a way that's healthy for both of you in the relationship. If you're the fearful avoidant listening to this, then this is also some important information just on what can help you in relationships, what needs you should be expressing, things that will really help you feel more deeply connected. And if you're not familiar with what fearful avoidant really means, the fearful avoidant attachment style is basically one of four major attachment styles or love styles that we have in relationships. Literally every single person has an attachment style, and it's sort of the subconscious set of rules that you learn about how to love. And our fearful avoidant is the partner in relationships that tends to really blow hot and cold. And it can sort of feel like a pendulum is swinging where they're really all in, really invested, really present. And then that pendulum can really shift the other direction, or it can feel like they can become quite avoidant, sort of stonewall, ice people out, close down. And all of this, in and of itself, in terms of unhealthy coping mechanisms, is actually the result of unhealthy things that this person was taught about how to love that often dates back all the way and has its origins in childhood. So, first and most important thing to recognize is if you're trying to build more closeness with the fearful avoidant attachment style, every fearful avoidant sort of has a Goldilocks zone. They have this space where if you get too close to them, they can swing to their avoidant side because they tend to feel overwhelmed and afraid of too much closeness and too much vulnerability, especially early on. And on the flip side of that, if there's too much distance, they can feel anxious and rejected and frustrated and either come on really strong, or when a fearful avoidant feels rejected, they may actually close down and become more avoidant as well. So think of the fearful avoidant as having both sides to that continuum. They can really swing back and forth. And there's no, particular thing where it's like, hey, if they feel anxious and they feel like they're more on their anxious side, they'll only express anxious behaviors. That's not the case with fearful avoidance. If they're feeling anxious because of too much distance, that can also cause them to close down or shut off. So it can really go either way. Now, it's important if you're on the receiving end of some of these things that you do healthy things like set a deadline, like don't invest, in an open-ended way in the relationship forever. What I always say to people is if your relationship's in some sort of rocky place, set a deadline, do as much work as you can within that deadline period of time, really invest everything, try new things, communicate your needs, share boundaries, discuss things more vulnerably, use different tools and strategies. And then if you're not seeing the needle move, then you know that it's time to walk away. And I would use that approach in terms of, this dynamic here. Number two, fearful avoidants tend to respond very well to feeling deeply seen. If they feel like somebody knows them, understands them, notices little things about them, and validates those things and cares to ask about those things, that is a huge thing for fearful avoidance because fearful avoidants don't always have the easiest time being vulnerable and opening up. They're really good at getting other people to open up, but sometimes it's hard for them. So when somebody notices things about them, it basically encourages them to see that, hey, this person knows things about me already, and they're still treating me in a kind and respectful way. So it's safe for me to share a little bit more of myself. Now, before I get into the next two big factors here for developing closeness with the fearful avoidant, I actually have a whole roadmap for this and exactly what the fearful avoidant needs based on every stage of the relationship that they are at. So whether you're in the dating stage, honeymoon stage, if you're in the power struggle stage, or the latter three stages we often talk about on this channel, it will give you the roadmap you need to know exactly how to navigate a relationship either as a fearful avoidant or with a fearful avoidant. It gives you all the different pain points and challenges, how to overcome them, break through them, the needs, the boundaries, everything to make a relationship thrive. And you can check that out for free for 14 days using the link below. It's only a 2-hour or so course. It should give you all the information you need for a major breakthrough, literally within the first, 1 to 3 days that you can sit and dig into it. So anyways, important to check that out if you are really wanting extra clarity and more so than I can just put into a short video. So point number three here is that fearful avoidants tend to value deep emotional connection. And this obviously has a lot to do with what we talked about earlier, making the fearful avoidant feel seen, but it also has a lot to do with being present. Asking deep questions, opening up deeper conversations, asking them about what they're feeling, asking them about different fears they might have, insecurities, how you can support them through those things, and sharing vulnerably about yourself. All of those things are very valuable to a fearful avoidant. And generally, when FAs feel emotionally connected, that sort of unlocks the doors to feeling comfortable, opening up more, also being more mentally connected, physically connected. That tends to be the sort of key that unlocks those next steps. And a lot of this comes from also validating their feelings and their perspective around things, and making them feel accepted and not judged. So these are all really important dynamics for the fearful avoidant. Last but not least, it's very useful to encourage your fearful avoidant partner, or to know if you are the fearful avoidant that this is really powerful work to do, to talk about their needs and their boundaries. Oftentimes, fearful avoidants tend to overgive. They're really good at seeing deeply into other people's experiences, but they don't often make enough space to share what their needs are, to say no, when something's a no for them, to really assess and pay attention to their own boundaries. And that ultimately tends to lead to resentment and frustration in relationships, and tends to also lead to just more conflict longer term. So, when there is encouragement around, hey, what do you need to feel better in a situation? What do you need to solve for this situation? What can I do in terms of meeting your needs in the relationship? When these dialogues are opened up, especially when they go both ways, okay, it shouldn't just always be a one way conversation. And when boundaries are encouraged in a relationship so that somebody feels comfortable and safe expressing their authentic selves, because you can basically guarantee that if you're not sharing your boundaries, you're not showing up authentically in relationships. All of those things actually deepen connection, as scary as they can feel initially. It really helps to deepen connection overall and make the dynamics that can cause eruptions in the relationship, those resentments, those frustrations, feeling unseen, unheard, it tends to get rid of those things proactively. So the more those conversations are had, the more deep the connection will be, the easier the bond will develop, and that closeness will develop. And it will get you out of that like sort of swinging dynamic of the hot and the cold, either as a fearful avoidant or as somebody dating the fearful avoidant. Keep in mind, as I mentioned, if you don't see the needle move, you don't see things changing, these are tools that should absolutely help change and move the needle. And if they're not, then you may be with somebody who just has a little bit too much trauma and pain points to be available for a fully healthy relationship right now. And that's where you would really want to use that deadline strategy. But if you're expressing clearly, communicating effectively, talking about needs and boundaries, making them feel seen, being in that Goldilocks zone, doing all those different things, these are things that ultimately make the fearful avoidant feel really connected, and just help develop more closeness and more progression in the relationship. Again, if you want to do a much deeper dive into those things, if you're like, I don't know how to talk about needs or boundaries, that course is free for 14 days using the link below. It's a limited time offer. We are just doing this for the month of February. And that is it for today. So thank you for being here. Thank you for watching. If you're enjoying this channel, please like, share, and subscribe. And I will see you in future videos.